Welcome everyone to the PJ's Cast. I'm your host Pierce, alongside of my good co-host Dylan. But making his triumphant return to the PJ's Cast today is Mitch Brown of EP Rinkside. How's it going, Mitch?
Not too bad. I've had a long, hard day of watching hockey after about 80 consecutive days of watching hockey. So I'm actually really excited to just talk about it instead of watching it for a little bit. That's going to be a nice little break.
You can have PJ's Cast as treat.
Yes.
So yeah, we're gonna waste any time here. So I believe we had you on this time last year, like March last year. It's been a year now. Being Blackhawks fans, we got to witness the Blackhawks not only win the draft lottery, but having the honor of picking Connor Bedard. As controversial as it was, I'd say it's worked out fairly good for the Blackhawks so far. But my first question is, how do you think of Connor Bedard? Like, what his first season has been going like, and what do you think of the rest of the Blackhawks 2023 class? Because they also drafted Oliver Moore, and they just signed Nick Lardis to an ELC, and I feel they did really good with the rest of their class as well. So I wonder what your thoughts were on that 2023 class.
So personally, I think Connor Bedard has been terrible this year. I mean, come on.
Oh, wow.
No, of course, he's been incredible.
I mean, yeah, you're right. If you look at the analytics.
There's no question. I think Connor Bedard has lived up to expectations, and I think in some capacity he's exceeded them. I think
personally, I think he's surpassed them. That's what I think. I think that's what Dylan thinks too.
Nice. Okay. And that seems pretty reasonable, right? I think we were all anticipating he'd come in, he'd score a few goals with a shot. He'd be, Connor Bedard. He's going to be physical. He's going to be aggressive. He's going to play decent enough defense. But it's that basically everything that he worked on last year translated to the NHL. Like last year, he's like, okay, I'm going to become more of a playmaker. I'm going to start changing pace more off the rush. And it's like instant. The fun part about him, right, is that you see all these highlights. And then it's like, oh, yeah, last season I saw him do this 20 times. And that's been a really cool experience to see a player just, I think, kind of take what they're successful at and new things that they added into their game and then continue to push that forward in the NHL, because usually guys kind of fall behind. They get to the NHL, they lose some things. He just keeps adding and adding and adding, and that's been very impressive. And then as for the rest of the draft, this guy's ridiculous. I don't know, he is so impressive. Oliver Moore, I think the offense was there this season. It would have been nice to see him take maybe a tiny little bit more of a step in terms of creating high danger offense, but he showed the skill, the speed. Him and Frank Nazar are going to be nasty in the NHL. So much speed, so much forward checking ability, defense, and both of those guys still have top six upside. I would say Nick Lardis has been different than last year because he's not able to attack off the rush in quite the same way with Brantford this year. Because last year it's all they're throwing long bomb cross ice passes. He's picking them up, driving the net. Here you're seeing him more carry the puck himself now. And so the way that he's generating offense is different, but in some capacity it's better because it's more translatable. Looks more like what he's going to do in the NHL. And the big thing is that it's giving him more opportunities to diversify and develop his skill set. So for me, I've been pretty impressed. And I know Alex Frand isn't scoring very much, but he's been pretty good despite playing 11, 12 minutes a night. Some nights I've been pretty impressed with him. So the whole class, based on the guys that I've seen, has been pretty solid. And there are some really, really great picks in there, highlighted by the first three.
Oh, yeah, for
sure. Yeah, but bad plus minus for Bedard. So the whole class is just, it's ruined now. You can't fix it ever.
The plus minus is one of those stats where it's always very convenient in how it gets used, isn't it?
Oh, it's always used for a player who's got a good one, and for a player who doesn't have a good one, it's like, oh, he's terrible. Sorry. Means he sucks at 5-on-5. So it's like, okay, I guess. But the numbers are saying otherwise, and the analytics say otherwise, so it's all right. But obviously, watching the Blackhawks this year, Bedard's kind of playing with makeshift. It's an island of misfit toys right now. Kurashev's been his most consistent line mate, and he's surpassed anything that I thought he could be. And I think that's more Bedard than him at this point. I mean, obviously, Kurashev's doing more with his game this year, but going into this draft, they're obviously going to have a top 4 pick. They're going to have 2 first-round picks again. Who are a couple of forwards that you think could be an ideal line mate for Bedard going forward? Because there's a couple that come to my mind, but I just want to hear what your thoughts would be.
An ideal line mate for Connor Bedard. See, this is the great thing about having Connor Bedard. It's all of them.
Yeah.
This is the great part about having Connor Bedard. So obviously Ivan Demidov and him would be an interesting fit, right? Connor Bedard has more of a hard skill type approach to the game than Demidov does. But Demidov is also very slick at work in the high cycle, which Chicago is moving towards. Every NHL team is moving towards, and it's how Connor Bedard finds a lot of his success. So instead of cycling in the corner, you cycle on the half wall. That's where Demidov is best, pulling that puck off the boards, walking to the inside. You'd like to probably see them with someone a little bit bigger, someone a little bit more net focused, but I think that would be a nice one. And then the low key kind of secret one is probably TJ Ginla, because he does have those hard skills. He has the ability to take advantage of Connor Bedard's playmaking, and he can also set up Connor Bedard. And just put it this way. You know what Brandon Hagel does for the Tampa Bay Lightning? That's what Teach could do for an NHL
trust
team.
Us.
Yeah. I don't want to bring up old wounds, but
we're used to it at this point. No worries.
But it's the same principle, right? Where you can stick this guy with your high-end guys, and he's going to make them better and also rise to their level. You can play him without them, and he's going to still be the same play-driving, talented forward. So Tej is kind of the guy who, when I look at Connor Bedard, I'm like, oh man, that would be cool.
Oh man, TJ Ginla would be electric. I haven't even been thinking about that just because I don't know where his stock is right now at the draft. But I wouldn't be against that one. That's for sure. Not a chance.
Tej is a very mixed player. You get a lot of mixed reviews on him. We had him at 6th in our most recent draft ranking, which seems to be the high based on the feedback that I've gotten. But it seems like on the NHL side, there's a lot of people who aren't so much believers in him, and other people who are like, he's top 10 every day. So I think as we come down this stretch, he's in the playoffs now. He's been hot. Teams are really going to start figuring out exactly how to slot him in. You're looking at someone who's very similar to Brendan Hagel or Seth Jarvis. He's a maybe average size, but very physical in how he approaches the game, creates a ton of space, and he has the high-end skills. So, I don't really see any reason why he wouldn't be top 10, but, I don't speak for everyone.
I got you for sure. Pierce, you want to go next, or does he freeze? I don't know, but I'll continue while Pierce is. I think he's got an internet issue right now. It's okay. So going into this year's draft, obviously this was a very highly touted forward draft last year. It was, the top 4 was touted as one of the best top 4s in recent memory, with the 4 centers going off the board. Who do you think has had the most surprising D+1 year when you look at those prospects? Because Will Smith obviously is tearing it up. You look at the guys in the NHL, they're doing great. I just want to hear your take on it.
Yeah, so the most surprising D+1, I think we could divide this into 2 questions. The most surprising and maybe the most impressive relative to expectations. I think the most impressive relative has probably been Ryan Leonard. He's the leader of Boston College in primary points per 60 at even strength, which is no easy feat. And he's got a pretty sizable lead over Perreault, and Cutter Gauthier is like a goal per game. So I've been really impressed with watching him. I think that's been really nice to see him have that type of impact. Last season, a lot of it was kind of projecting. He was the play driver, but how much more of a play driver can he be with those 2 guys? And he's been even more of a play driver than he was last season, in no small part due to the fact that his superior physical game relative to them has enabled him to kind of power through more checks, more offense, and so on. And then the biggest surprise overall, you never want to say like Will Smith because he has the production and everything like that. I would say probably Dalibor Dvorsky, because it wasn't locked in stone that he was going to come over to the OHL. And when he did, it was no guarantee that he would be as effective as he has been. I'm not saying he's the best player on his line. I think that's clearly been Quentin Musty. He's been an incredible player. And if I were to redraft, Quentin Musty would go top 10, maybe top 8. But Dvorsky has shown a lot more dynamic qualities to his game than I saw last season. And it's been really cool to watch a player who's played in pro for what feels like forever go into the OHL and just mess around and have fun and come out of it looking like a much, much better prospect.
For sure. And ironically, Dvorsky and Musty were 2 guys I was pretty high on for the Hawks last year, depending on where they were ended up getting slotted. Don't like that Dvorsky's on the Blues, but that's all right. That's a great system for him to go into. He'll have plenty of talent around him. And then you look at Musty. Musty's going to get every opportunity in San Jose once he gets that chance. So they're good. Both those players are just – you looked at their raw tool set, and it was just if they could just – at least with Musty, it was if he could put it all together, because there's some games where he does, and there's some games where he wasn't in his draft year, and it seems like he's just taken that step this year, and it's been very fun to watch for sure. So as for this year's draft, obviously this is a bit of a different draft. It seems like it's a very defenseman heavy draft from what I've at least seen. How do you tier this draft in comparison to previous drafts when you talk about like the 2023 draft, the 2022 draft, etc.?
So to me, this is probably the most fascinating draft I've ever covered. I'm not saying it's better than last year's draft, but it is the most interesting draft because you have so many guys who their skill set is I'm big and can do lots of things. And particularly on the defenseman side, from the defenseman side, from top to bottom, it's big and I can do things. And it's a matter of which ones can do them the best, which ones can do them in the most translatable way. And so, the difference between, say, a Sam Dickinson and a Harrison Brunick ranked as kind of a late first, early second guy. Sam Dickinson is potentially a top 5 pick, is potentially very small. I mean, it could be gigantic, don't get me wrong, but it could also be very small, which you generally don't get in a lot of these drafts. So that's been pretty interesting to see. And then as for the tiers, I would say there's probably a clear top 3. NHL teams would disagree with this. Salayev would be in the top 3 instead of Demidov. But for me, it's Celebrini, Demidov, Lindstrom. And then basically from 4, maybe 5 to 13, it's one big tier of these like well above average players for that range in a draft class, but figuring out exactly which order they go and figuring out how translatable they are. Like they all have questions, right? With Cole Eiserman, what's his game outside of just the scoring element? With Kotsta Helenius, does he have the dynamic skills to be a top 6 guy? With Berkeley Katnitz, can he withstand the physicality of the game and create using physicality? And so with all these guys, you have so many questions that you don't have, but the boom, it might even exceed a lot of them. And then as for when you get deeper in the draft, there are more second round talents in this draft than there were in last year's draft and the previous draft before that. And a part of that, again, is because of the tools and the expectations and everything. But I also think this is where you're really starting to see players who lost that COVID year, because usually when they lose that year, or in previous years when they've lost that year, it's been something that has really kind of hurt their development. You don't really get to see what's going to happen until afterwards. Whereas with, let's say, Terrence Smith, misses part of the year because of COVID, and then he misses last year due to injury. You're just starting to see lots of players like Terran and others come into their own now. So they might be a little bit less of a certain second round, but you're certainly going to have more players with more runway than normal, which for me, like this is what I'm in. This is why I do it. The top guys are cool, but for me, it's like maybe I can find a few guys, put them in the late second, early third, and they'll go 200 or whatever, and then immediately outperform expectations. So it's been a very cool draft class to follow. And of course, Pierce is back now, which is great. I was missing him.
Let's go.
That's the most important part of it all, obviously. Yeah.
Oh yeah, Pierce. We were just talking about how he's tiering this draft, so just to let you know where we are.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
Yeah.
To kind of. Yeah, because that was my question I wanted to ask. So for me right now, I have the draft tier to obviously Macklin Celebrity tier 1, but for me, tier 2, like if the Blackhawks are picking 2, you can flip a coin or whatever saying you want to use. Like you can go, for me, I'm comfortable with Lev Shunov, I'm comfortable with Lindstrom, I'm comfortable with Demidov. But to me, like after that tier 3, that's kind of where it gets interesting to me, because there's a bunch of defensemen like, Dickinson, Silyayev, and I guess that kind of goes into my next question. Is I feel this year it's more defensive heavy, especially at the top. And for you, what are the big stylistic differences between all the top defensemen, between Dickinson, Levshunov, Silyayev, and even Boyum and Perrick? If you want to go through
the similarities. Yeah, okay. We can work through it. The similarity is that they all do things at a high level, but all have significant shortcomings relative to the other players. So navigating this requires a lot of effort, to put it nicely. I'm up to 8 viewings on most of these guys in that range. And it's like, I'm going to need 5 more to really kind of solidify how I'm feeling about it. But for me, the top guy of those defensemen is Perrick. So with Zane Perrick, it's translatable offense. I understand he's not breaking down players off the point like Lane Hudson does or whatever. It's a lot more point shot heavy, a lot more shot pass heavy. But when you look at how top offensive defensemen score in the NHL, a lot of it is being just really good at hitting the shot pass. Look at Quinn Hughes. Quinn Hughes' game is just being real nasty with that shot pass, walk in, cut back, turn around, half clapper shot pass right to a guy to tip it in. And that's where Zane is best. Like that's where he's really, really dynamic in the offensive zone, creating those opportunities. And with Saginaw's kind of staggered double screen offensive zone setup, it gives him a lot of opportunities to work on that style of play because that's how a lot of NHL teams play, right? So I think with him, he's probably the number one, certainly in terms of raw point producing upside. And the addition of the physical side of his game this season has really taken off. The defense has really improved. Obviously, ton of questions remain. Like Zane still has a lot of work ahead, but he's proven to be a player who can add new skills, improve significantly at a rapid pace. The difference between his defense in December versus now is ginormous. Like now he can go out there against a Colby Barlow or a Denny Gore, who are two top players in the OHL, and strip them of the puck in a projectable NHL way, take the middle angle, come across, get the puck off them, and so on. And at the beginning of the season, he's just like skating at them with a stick out, waving it around in front, trying to get them to do something and not getting much for it. So he would be the number one for me. And then you get into the tricky question of how do you manage the big toolsy guys? So the guys who are tall, they can really move. Their impacts can be very volatile. Sam Dickinson is an intelligent player in some regards, and in others, he still has a lot to work on. I think with Dickinson, this is a guy who really wants to be a player. You know, everything that you hear about him is he's a guy who's about this, trying to improve. And I think this season really shows that he's a player who can add new skills and integrate new things into his game. The question is, will he ever become more than just a guy who can activate and shoot the puck hard? Or can he just be that and still be a top pairing defenseman? Like Evan Bouchard exists. So I'm not saying he's Evan Bouchard level offense, but Evan Bouchard exists. And there are guys who derive their entire game doing very similar things to Sam Dickinson who play top pairing. There are also guys who do similar things and aren't in the NHL. And it's kind of the same thing with Lev Shunov. I think Lev Shunov is probably a little bit more creative, a little bit more dexterous than Dickinson is with the puck, but same type of questions. Slyev is the biggest wild card, right? Because he's gigantic. He can really skate. Like it's mind-blowing watching him skate, but the details in his game are very few. He's still learning how to use his range, use his size. I think one thing that has been apparent to me after my last batch of viewings was that he's better on small ice than he is on big ice, because on big ice, he'll kind of like overskate, overcommit, and get beat. Whereas on the small ice, he has there's a lot more room to make errors, because then he just teleports across to these guys and they don't know what's at, and they don't know what just hit him. So it's a tough one. William, I think, is maybe not the most explosive skater, but he's a dynamic skater. So you're not projecting him to be able to separate off the point in the way that he does. I know he doesn't even do it that often in the NCAA, but you're not expecting him to separate off the point very often. You're expecting him more to do what Perek does, which is shot passes, tips for deflections, open up shooting lanes, and so on. And maybe that element isn't quite as high end, which is why he's kind of at the bottom of that tier, or at least vying for the last three spots for me. But yeah, it's a really tricky group. Like I could talk about it forever. Like you guys could have me on for like 8 hours and I'll just talk 8 straight hours about this and be like, I don't know what to do. And then I'll kind of like get a little bit closer and then I'll say something else and be like, no. I need to redo this whole thing. It's a really close tier with 5 prospects who have all shown tremendous growth and ability to improve. So it's going to be, for me, the thing that I'm most excited to watch next year when we get the Draft Plus One viewings in.
No, that's a great idea. Let's just go 8 hours for this podcast. We've done like 3-hour shows. I mean, what's another 5 hours gonna do?
I don't know how you guys do it. We do the draft rank meeting sometimes, and it's like 2-ish hours. And by an hour and a half, I'm like, if I never had to say another word in my life, I would be perfectly happy.
Well, we do have more questions.
Power through usually.
Kind of on that topic, like you guys at EP Rinkside, by the way, go ahead and get a subscription for it. It's totally worth it, especially if you're into the draft like we are. How do you go about doing that ranking? Because you're obviously doing it with a bunch of other people, a bunch of other regional scouts. So is it just consensus? And if so, like, what do you value when ranking players, and what do your other cohorts that you talk with the most, what do they value with ranking? How do you come to that top 96 ranking? and how long does it usually take for you guys to do so?
That is, yeah.
I guess
okay.
what's
So
the process of it really?
Sure. So this is a fun question because basically we have 12, 15 people and they all have their own rankings. And then we have a system that estimates, they cover a region, right? And then we have a system that estimates where they would fit into a full draft. And then that all gets put into a math formula based on how much work everyone has done, right? So, or based on their titles. So like David, for example, is our lead crossover scout. He's our head scout. He's the guy who gets the most viewings on the top guys. So he, unfortunately, gets more say in how the top of the draft is than I do. Do I hate him? Maybe, maybe not. But that's just the way that it has to be.
We have it on record.
Yes. David, if you're listening to this, I'm not kidding. Anyway. So that's kind of how you set it up, right? Because, okay, let me peel this back a little bit. If you're an NHL team, your job is to get it right. And that's not to say that you're trying to pick the best player available every single time. You're picking based on a criteria that you have established. There's a filtering process that NHL teams are able to use for their lists. Say, I will drop all 5'10" average skaters. We don't even have to consider them. Or we're going to drop all 6'6" guys who can't skate. We don't have to consider them. Or we only value guys with physicality. And so we're going to pick the best skilled physical players. In the public setting, you can't do that because you have to rank players. You have to rank all of these guys because different teams have different philosophies. And so the idea is that if you average out all these NHL teams, they're going to have a relatively, let's say, vanilla philosophy on the draft. We, on the other hand, as like an NHL team side of things, don't. But if we, say me as an evaluator, I have a very strong opinion on how I view the draft and where I think players ought to be ranked. But I can't do that in a public setting to the extreme that I would like to do because I have a responsibility to make sure that I'm producing a ranking that actually makes sense to be put out in the public. So you can see that there's like a different philosophy here, different ways of tackling this problem. On the NHL side, it's all about who do we like, who do we value for our organization. And in the public, it's all how do we rank players in a way that I don't want to say is inoffensive, but how do we rank players in a way that adequately reflects what teams will do on average or how we see the average team having a philosophy. And then you have to integrate your own little philosophy into that as well. So as an example, I'll have a player ranked 50th and then they'll be put at 90th on the board because that's just the way that works. And I keep in mind, I'm ranking all the guys from North America. So like, I have to work with other people's opinions, give credit where it's deserved. The other thing too, is that NHL teams, if a guy watches a player 20 times, that 20 times is going to go into the overall pool. And say another guy watches him 10 times and is a higher rank or has a stronger opinion on him, they're going to value the person who has the 10 games more than the guy who has the 20. Now, in the public setting, you can't do that because you're accountable to the people who are working for you. Not everyone that works for us is full time. And so it's our responsibility to make sure that people's opinions are reflected in an appropriate manner. Like if basically the tie goes to the person who has done the most work. And sometimes I don't agree with that. Like I don't agree with their opinion that leads to that, but you just have to make that compromise because you want to reward people for putting in the time and effort as they deserve, which is a consideration that you don't necessarily have to have for an NHL team. And so I think it's important that as someone from the public looking at our draft ranking and critiquing it, you have to acknowledge that this is not just one homogenous group. This is a group with a lot of different opinions, and we fight each other over every single ranking. And then the product that you see at the end is something that all of us are uncomfortable with, but it's something that is the most agreeable between us.
Yeah.
And then we can also get into like the knowledge imbalances and stuff like that. Cause like sometimes we rank this most recent ranking. I've seen some of these guys 12 times. I've seen others 4. And so then you're dealing with a gap of like knowledge and how you see players and so on and so forth. And so it's really just a delicate dance. I think I rambled a little bit there, but that's kind of what I've been doing lately. And my brain is mush from all this hockey, but I hope that answered the question relatively well.
Oh, for sure, dude. It sounds like the fucking Hunger Games when you're trying to get the list together. Like, listen, I want to rank this guy 15. Well, I have him ranked 87th, and I've been here for 5 more years. So we're going to rank him at like 36 right now. It's just like,
yeah.
Yeah, that would frustrate me a little bit, honestly. But like, I guess that's the beauty of like you could drop your own rankings eventually, and then you could see the difference between like the consensus and what you have for your rankings. Because obviously, everyone's got, like you said, it's a lot of different opinions in one pot. Like, it's hard to gauge at times and whatnot. But like, it's got to be fun when you go to like the next year's meeting and it's like the guy you were right about, but they ranked 90th. It's like, yeah, he's having a pretty good D+1 year right now. Who would have guessed that?
Yeah, I mean, there definitely is some of that, but I think for the most part, like on our team, we all kind of understand the game. Like we all understand that you're just gonna have to take your lumps. Like I've missed on players solely because everyone was against me on the player. And do I wake up and scream into my pillow every night? Yes. Do I think it's a big deal? Probably not. Like, you know what? Like Easton Cowan last year, I would have had him higher than where we had him, and I wouldn't have had him high enough. So I'm still wrong.
Mm-hmm. No, I get what you mean there for sure. I remember seeing Easton Cowan get drafted when we were in Nashville, and I would have never guessed he was as good as he was this year in London. And like that's credit to him as a player and his development, and also I guess credit to the Maple Leaf staff of finding that talent. But like you said, you were higher on him than most, and even then, that's still like night and day what the difference was the next year. Which makes it interesting because it kind of goes into my next question. Because, every year there's a guy who, there's your Chinikov, there's your Easton Cowan, there's someone who goes from the consensus ranking like 80 above where he should. Is there someone in your mind that you think could make that jump this year on round 1 or even round 2? Because I know you said there's a lot of second round talent in this year's draft.
Yeah. So the first thing that I want to say is that Pierce asks me a question and then just leaves because he doesn't want to hear the answer. And personally, I'm a little offended by this. Like this is like
you just said
the thing is like this is just like dropping a bomb and then just walking out of the room and be like, it's your problem now. Like you don't know how long I ranted about your question, Pierce.
Well, I'm glad that you and Dylan got good mileage out of it, and hopefully the listeners. But yeah, my internet is just
Oh my gosh.
I would say the guy who I think will. I mean, there are actually a lot of good candidates this year, right? I think Nathan Villeneuve would have been one, and then you got the 15 gamer for putting a bounty on another OHL player. I think he would have been a good one, like super intense checking forward. There's skill there too. Now I'm not so sure. I wouldn't be surprised if Stian Solberg goes in the first, physical guy, highly engaged. He tries to make plays, playing pro. That's kind of the perfect thing. But for me, the one surprise one, the one that would be, holy crap, who is this? Would be AJ Spilacci. 6'3", skates like the wind. He's physical. He tries hard. He's got dangles. The difficulty is that the details on the game are still developing. Keep in mind, he wasn't a full-time hockey player until recently because he did have D1 and he did have D1 football scholarships that he turned down. Oh, wow. And so his hockey season was always a little bit shorter. But yeah, special set of tools, hardworking kid. You see the hockey sense in spurts. It's just a combination of the rawness of his game and Windsor being a pretty horrible environment overall. But I wouldn't be surprised if he's not in the first round. I wouldn't be surprised if like first 3 to 5 picks of day 2, AJ Spilacci's in there.
Well, that sounds like Kyle Davidson's music. That's like his type of player right there, and he wants more size in the prospect pool. So like, I don't know. That sounds right up his alley.
Fast big guy, yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of how he drafts with forwards. If you're fast, if you can skate, you're going to be on his board. So, I had one more question just in particular. We didn't write this one down, Pierce, but I'm just like, when I watch Celebrating, obviously he's incredible, right? At BU, he's been lights out as a freshman. But I'm curious do you think he's going to be a center or a winger in the NHL? And if he gets drafted by Chicago, let's say, do you put him on the wing with Bedard, or do you try to do the Bedard Celebrini 1-2 punch like a Crosby Malkin or something?
Center through and through. I think he's the best down low defensive player in the draft, and he's playing college hockey. So like usually when you get guys who are really good down low, they're kind of just like a really good checking player who maybe will make the Rinskide draft guy but go unpicked. He's the best guy that I've seen, and he's the first overall guy. And some of the ways that he generates his offense too are very center oriented. It's a lot of like getting the puck off the boards or out of a battle, hitting a teammate, skating the middle, getting it back, and then using the middle as a way to both build speed and to pull the defense towards him and then take advantage of the gaps that creates on either side. So to me, he's a pretty clear-cut center. I think the interesting part about him being with Chicago would be you could give him the Bedard center thing or just have Bedard on the wing, whatever, and just kind of see how it fits. But with all the talent that's coming in Chicago, it's still a few years away, but you get Celebrini at center, he probably adjusts pretty quickly. And then he can be the guy who can then carry other new players coming into the NHL. He just has that vibe to me. Like you watch him play, you watch his details, you see how intelligent he is, how engaged he is. He'll be 19 years old and they'll be calling him an NHL vet.
That's the type of stuff you want to hear if you're going to draft a guy first overall too. Like, I mean, he seems like just such a, like from what you just talked about, and it sounds like he's just a very well-rounded center. And it's something that like, I'd love to have 2 elite centers down the middle. I'm not complaining. It's just like,
most teams
you
would.
look at some of these duos and it's like, oh, maybe they'll be on the same line, but like, I don't know. You look at when the Hawks are really good, Taves and Kane were on separate lines most of the time. So if you have like 2 studs on both lines, and like you said, Celebrini could be the guy that like helps Oliver more when he comes in or something, or, like we'll throw Colton Dock in there next year because that might actually be a case. But like his game is just like he gels with his teammates so well, and it doesn't matter who's on his wings, it seems like. And that's kind of the case with Bedard right now too. So if they could have both of that'd be lights out. And also, like, wherever he ends up, he's going to be elite. Like, if he's in San Jose, he'll have Will Smith slinging pucks on the power play. Like, it's going to be gross wherever he ends up. I'm excited to see where Celebrini ends up and just how good he is year one for sure. Because I think he's going to be an immediate impact player.
I agree 100%. I've rarely seen a player, even of this elite caliber, improve as quickly as he has. The difference between him and his last Shattuck St. Mary's year is gigantic. He went from being maybe not the most exciting, dexterous skater to now being explosive, powerful, driving mover. Like he's closed. There were so much. I remember a few years ago, there were a lot of questions about, does Celebrini have the skating ability to play and to be a first overall caliber prospect? And then he got it to a point where he clearly did. And then he's like, actually, I'm just going to become a high-end skater. I'm just going to keep going down this pathway, right? And I think with him, maybe it's not necessarily the highest point producing upside you've had from a first overall pick. But I'm also not going to say that he can't get there. Like it's Macklin Celebrini. This guy is a different player every single year I've seen him. He gets better at a rate that I've rarely seen. So never bet against Macklin, ever. It doesn't matter how stupid it is.
Yeah, he seems like a player that, like, at minimum is going to be a lock for like 30 goals, 40 assists every year. Like he's just and plays a strong 200-foot game. Like I'm so excited to see, like, because all the bottom teams right now, they already have talent there that he can sling the puck to. It's like if he goes to Anaheim, he'll have Carlson and all that, and McTavish.
That'd be nasty with their center core already.
Right? Like, and then you go to San Jose, you got Will Smith and Quentin Musty coming up through the system, and you got Eklund still hanging around there. You go to Columbus, you would have Fadim Fantilli and all those young Ken Johnson and all that plethora of young talent. You throw a catalyst in there like Celebrini, it could just change it. It's going to change a team overnight, regardless of who he gets drafted by. And it may not be like they're going to make the playoffs the next year, but like the vibe of the team is whoever team he ends up on going to completely change. It's not going to be like, not trying to dunk on the Habs, but like it's not like when Slavkovsky got picked first overall. Like this is going to be something
instant impact.
Yeah,
to be diplomatic, I guess.
For sure.
Yeah. And you talk about the vibes in an organization changing, right? Like, I mean, you guys have just witnessed this with Chicago. I don't know if a team has ever had worse vibes before. And then you take Connor Bedard, and whether or not that was annoying and stupid is my own opinion. But it's clear that this completely changed how Chicago Blackhawks fans view the organization. And also, I mean, like the excitement around everything Connor Bedard does is like, it's incredible to watch. It's truly great to see him have so much success. And I think the vibes in an organization, like it sounds so stupid, but the vibes in the organization are so integral to just like fan engagement and fan interest. Like a team can be competitive and have bad vibes, and then people are just going to not be as invested in what happens on a Thursday night in February. But if you have someone like Celebrini or Connor Bedard, that instantly changes fan investment. I mean, with Montreal, you bring up Montreal about how he wasn't like an instant impact guy, but the vibes changed for the better when they picked Slavkovsky, just because it became like, okay, what's Slavkovsky going to do tonight? And then, all right, first season doesn't go so well, but now Habs fans are rocking because they might be losing games and they might be losing some bad ones, but he's scoring a ton. He's on fire. He looks like a much better player. And I think in some ways he's probably ahead of the curve. Like there are areas where he's still very far behind, don't get me wrong. But for Slokowski in particular, like I don't think that I anticipated him figuring out the physical side of the game at this point in his NHL career. So it's been pretty cool to just see how basically every first overall pick can completely change the excitement level in a franchise. And I think it makes everyone, even players, teams, whatnot, a little bit more invested.
Oh, 100%. And it allows you as an organization to maybe make moves that you weren't going to make the year before. Like, let's say he goes to San Jose. Like, I have to imagine that that's going to be a hot free agent spot for guys who want to get paid in the short term. Like San Jose can make that happen, and you'll get to play with Celebrini. Like the Hawks just did that last year with a couple of guys. Like it's just something that could be so valuable. And even if it's not at the highest skill, like you could talk people into being on a team with a superstar like that. It's very easy. It's a lot easier than being like, hey, we're pretty middling and, you know, you might put us over the top. You might not. This is just like, oh, you're going to help us bring this kid in for the next generation. And you could be a part of that. And like, I just think there's a lot of people or a lot of players that would like it, especially on the tail end of their careers, that would definitely be a part of that. Obviously, if you're like 28, go get your money, go play for a contender, go try to win a Stanley Cup. But like, you know, if you're on the back end of your career, why not? And you get to live in San Jose. Like, it'd be a great place. Like, I guess that's the kind of the beauty of the bottom of the barrel right now. It's like, oh, so I get to live in LA, San Jose, or Chicago. It's pretty good. And then you get drafted by Columbus, but that's a whole other thing. Columbus is still nice, but it's not the same. It's not the same. Not the same as LA or Chicago, that's for sure. I wanted to ask, I think Pierce is here or not here. I wanted to ask this for him. Obviously, you already talked about TJ Ginla. You're very high on him and his play style, at least for what it would work with the Blackhawks. Pierce also wanted to ask about Brandon Nygaard. I forget. I don't want to butcher his name, but he seems like a guy who I could see going in the top 10 if a franchise is high enough on him. I could also see him being in the 20s if like no one likes his game. I just wanted to know your thoughts on that player.
So the number one thing is that he has top 9 caliber checking skills. So we're not talking about a guy who runs around and hits people. He does, but someone who can convert those hits, that physicality into immediate offense. So that's kind of the big separating thing. What you're looking at with players like that is usually, are they really good at getting the puck to the middle? Like there are players around the NHL. I mean, Colorado won a cup having a team full of these guys where they're not necessarily individually dynamic, but what they do is they hit people, free the puck, drive it to the middle. It doesn't even have to be a clean play. It can just be something that gets the puck to the middle for their teammates to be able to take advantage. Gabriel Landeskog had an entire career to this. Valery Nichushkin, this is what he does. It's drive to the middle off the boards over and over and over and over again. And so with Brandon Nygaard, it's going to be figuring out what exactly his level of skill in that area is. For us, we're kind of in the middle, right? I think we had him at 15. We kind of see him as someone who probably plays that in a third line capacity. Maybe if everything breaks right, he can do it in a top 6. But certainly, like, I think when I read some of our game reports, like there are definitely people, and especially in like certain instances in games where you're talking about someone who could do it in a top 6. And then there are also there's also the other side of it. Well, maybe he's just not dynamic enough to do it. But yeah, so for me, I think where we have him is probably splitting the difference between the two different projections. But overall, yeah, definitely a guy who I think at minimum is a third liner in the NHL, brings unique value no matter what. One of those guys who you in a couple of years can stick in the NHL lineup and not have to worry too much about.
For sure. Who do you think would be a good comp for him right now if you had to pick one? Would it be Nichushkin or?
See, the Nichushkin one is tricky because Nichushkin is a little bit of a better skater, right? Like so much of Nichushkin's upside comes from the fact that he can just, not sure what to do. I'm just going to skate right past you. I don't know if Nygaard is at that level, but you see, this is a great exercise because we do shades of in the NHL draft guide. And so I always have to figure out like, okay, this guy, he has some similarities. How does this work with that? How does this all overlap? So on. I think there's probably a lot of Matthew Nyes in his game. Someone who just like will like kind of combine finesse and power to just bulldoze his way and then toe drag a guy on his way to the inside. Someone like that, and probably like Nye still has a lot of runway, so you could see him kind of following a similar development curve as well, where he comes into the NHL, looks really good, maybe slows down a tiny little bit just as he gets used to having to manage the physicality, the wear and tear, and then he comes back on real strong in the second half of year 2 or year 1.
For sure, yeah. He sounds like a player that like some NHL franchise are just going to salivate over because you just need that play style come playoff time. And if he can, like you said, if the skill can match, that's going to be a dangerous combination. Like we're seeing it right now in the NHL. Like that's like a what do you call it? It's like a white whale of a player almost. Like everyone's looking. I'm not going to say it's like the same thing, but like everyone wants that Matthew Tkachuk type player that's just going to say, "Hey, I'm just going to take the puck off the boards and I'm taking it to the net, and there's nothing you can do about it." And if he has any bit of that game in his toolbox, like teams are going to salivate over that. That's why I think he might go top 10. It's just because I think some team, especially if they're like I could see a team like the Minnesota Wild just being like, "Yep, we're going to add that to our system. He fits right in, fits like a glove. Like we're going to have him learn from all of our hard checking forwards and wingers. He's going to learn the upside from take a couple things from Kaprizov here and there. Like I don't know." He's a very intriguing prospect in my eyes. Like I wouldn't mind the Hawks taking him with the Tampa pick. It's just I don't know if he's there. That's the thing. Like that's the thing with that prospect. He could literally go 9. He could be there when the Hawks pick at like 21 or something. Like it's a very intriguing. That's the thing with this draft too. It's just super intriguing. And then I wanted to close it off on one thing because like my Pierce knows this. My favorite prospect in this draft is Caden Lindstrom. I think his tool set, if he can put it all together in the NHL level, that's going to be unstoppable. Because the way he skates, the way he uses his size, the way he can he sees plays before they happen, it seems like, and he knows where to put his body when he needs to. I just wanted to hear your thoughts on him as a prospect because, I mean, if the Hawks are picking 2, and I would pick him at 2, honestly. I love Demidov too, but I don't know. Something about Lindstrom's size and his power and his skating and his shooting, I feel like it's all very translatable. Just wanted to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, so this is time for me to plug my article that I wrote on Caden Lindstrom at the beginning of the season, where I talked to Caden and a bunch of people in his camp and got to really understand him at a deeper level. And he's a pretty special kid. Sometimes you talk to people around them, and they have lots of great things to say, but I've never heard anyone talk about a player the way they talk about Caden. I mean, he's that rare guy who's just insanely focused, insanely intense on the rink, but when he comes off it, he's just super calm, relaxed, open to everything, willing to improve. I think his development curve has been insane. The first time I watched him was at the WHL Cup, Team BC. You could see the skill. He was fast. He was physical. He could really shoot it, but that was about it. You could see that he had a really good understanding of the game. It was just that his understanding was very narrow. He knew what he knew extremely well, but the playmaking side, the dynamic faucet of the game was still developing. And then he goes into the WHL right away, and he plays center for the first time in his life in the WHL at 16 years old, passes every single test. Then this season, I mean, it's honestly like it's hard to describe like how impressive he's been, especially when you have it's rare to see a player improve this much, to put it mildly. It's very rare to see a player improve this much. And to see this guy come in this season, score a bunch of goals off the hop, do all the dynamic rush patterns, everything Berkeley Catton can do off the rush. Berkeley Catton is a 5'10" skill guy. Everything Berkeley Catton can do, Caden Lindstrom can do it off the rush. Like, you don't see that very often. And then you see his ability to get to the inside. I asked him, like, so, like when you're playing along the boards, when you're on the outside looking in, what's your mentality? And he's like, well, if I'm not sure what to do, I go to the middle, which is a complete opposite of what most players answer to that question, right? It's, I'll try to pull a guy into me before I move the puck. He's like, no, I'm just going to take it straight to the bank. Like, there's no doubt. And so I really admire the way that he thinks about the game. I admire the way that he plays. And I think he's a guy who's improved tremendously. He's honestly one of those guys who you can see him at wing, you can see him at center. It doesn't matter. You can see him becoming more of a playmaker. You can see him just becoming more of a shooter. He uses the comp Rope Hintz, which is like, it's like Rope Hintz with more violence. So I as to peel it back a little bit, I have a quote that I didn't get to include in that article that I wanted to share. And that was from his billet father, who also helps train him in the offseason. And he said, he's not a power forward. He's a skilled forward with power. And it's like, that's what Caden Lindstrom is to me, right? Like, he's this guy who you can try to put him in a box and he's just going to keep reinventing himself and keep adding more layers to his game. And I think as time goes on, it's a shame that we didn't get to see him in the second half until the playoffs, because he probably would have looked pretty different in the second half, probably even more playmaking, probably even more dynamic control to his game, probably even more finesse. And like, there are some things to work on. You want to see him be a little bit more disciplined. You want to see him tighten up his defensive zone coverage. You want to see that playmaking improve. But I think all in all, he projects as a number one center, the type of player who can control the flow of the game, and someone who can also bring a totally unique element as well. Like, based on what I've been told, definitely in the off-ice capacity, like certainly a guy who's going to be a leader in his own way, and then on the ice going to be someone who can do pretty much everything you want him to do and keep improving. Yeah, he's a special talent. I'm really looking forward to following his career. One of those guys who, you know, sometimes you talk to someone and they're like, oh, you know, like you talk to a player or you talk to their camp and they're exciting and they interest you and you want to keep learning more and more about them. But with Caden, it's like, I think there's a potentially a really special player here.
Definitely. And like, I think I've told Pierce for like the last 4 months, I just watched Caden Lindstrom's tape and I'm like, you strap this dude to Bedard's left wing, like, good luck. Just good luck guarding all that. Like, it's, if they can figure out the defensive side of the game, it's over. Like, that's a duo that could be unstoppable in my eyes, because Lindstrom could just clear so much space with his style of play. And they're both so smart with how they see the ice. I think that could just be such a good duo coming out of this draft. But also, like you said, he's so good down the middle. He could be a number one center. He has that potential. Like, if he goes to like a San Jose, he's going to dominate in San Jose, I think, especially if you put him with like a Quentin Musty. Like, those two coming up the wing, good luck. Good luck. Fun. Just good luck. You're not stopping that, especially because of how he's developed on the rush this year in particular. Like, he'll pass the puck, he'll clear the middle of the ice, and then he'll get open again for a shot. And it's little things like that. Like, I'm watching when he was healthy, Fantilli and Carlson are really good at doing that this year, where they'll just take everyone to the middle and it sets up their wingers coming behind them, and then they'll set themselves up for space. Like, he's a special player, and I'm very excited. Like, that's the thing with this draft. Like, there's at least 5 players where I'm like, I cannot wait to see these guys in the NHL, because I just think when they hit their ceilings, it's going to be nasty. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I have the same mentality with Kane as I do with other players. Like, there are so many of these guys who I'm just like I'm not much of a fan of hockey, because like I spend every day watching it, so it can be hard to kind of maintain that fandom. But when you watch someone like Caden, or when you watch someone like T.J. Ginlow, or you watch someone like Zane Parekh, then that fandom kind of comes out again, where you're like, you go from watching a game to being really excited. You know, I have Zane Parekh on the docket tomorrow. That's who I have to watch. I'm really looking forward to that day. Or, oh, tomorrow I have to watch Beckett Seneca. I'm really looking forward to that. And so this draft seems like so many of those guys. Like, there are maybe 5-10 of them where I start feeling like a fan again. Like, it makes me feel like why I got into this career again.
I love to hear that. Oh my God. That gets me excited just for the next couple months and seeing just a little bit more analysis of all these players going down the line. Because obviously, like, Pierce and I have briefly looked at like the top 10 mainly, at least for me. Like, I've kind of looked at the first round, but it's hit and miss. Like, I picked guys I've watched and whatnot. But from the way you're talking about some players, like, it sounds like it's going to be a draft where like the first 64 or 75 picks are going to be really exciting. So I'm looking forward to it. I don't know about you, Pierce. Do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, well, I've been gone for half the time. I don't know if you guys brought his name up, but I want to talk about our Norwegian king, Michael Brensik-Nygaard. How much of his tape have you watched, if any at all?
Yeah, so I've been working backwards on the European players. I already answered this question earlier, so I don't got to worry about it. But yeah, so full disclosure, a lot of my opinion is derivative of Lassie Olanen's opinion on him. But yeah, so I saw him at the World Juniors. I've watched a couple league games, and I think to sum it all up again, he's one of those guys who has the capacity to play in a third line role, high probability, but there's also more runway to achieve a higher, loftier role in the lineup. And then to follow up with Dylan's point about like how this draft is very exciting, and I don't want to say that it's, it's going to be an above average draft and it's going to be the best draft ever, because I don't think it's that. But I think in terms of pure excitement, in terms of pure intrigue, there hasn't been another draft like it that I followed. And I've been doing this since 2015 in some capacity. So, man, it's been a long time. Jesus, it's already 2024. What have I done with my youth?
Covered some very good
That's
prospects
10
over the years.
God. I'm having an existential crisis on a podcast. Oh, man.
Hey, well,
That's
if
what
it makes you
podcasts
feel
are
any
for,
better,
after
we
all.
love your work and it's tremendous. And every time that you post an article, we're there to read it and we're there to repost it. So just keep up the good work, man, because we all appreciate it. Like this, like Pierce and I joke about it. Every time we have like you or Chris Peters on or someone, it's like classes in session. I'm just ready to listen and take in all the information that you guys have been working on all year. And we really appreciate the amount of film you guys watch, because it can't be, I know there's some days where it really can't be easy. It's like, all right, I got to go watch tape for 8 hours on someone that, doesn't quite move me as much as a player. Like, we really appreciate all the work you do. And it sounds like, the way the consensus rankings work, like you were talking about, like that's a very intensive process. Like, we just really appreciate all the work you guys do at EP Rinkside for sure.
I really appreciate it. It's some days you wake up and it's a little bit of a weird process, because you're watching, because you're not just watching guys that are draft picks. You're watching, there's 224 picks. I have to know 400 guys from North America and everything about them, or as much as possible about them. And so sometimes you're just watching games and you realize 3/4 of the way through, no one in this game is going to get drafted, or no one in this game is going to go in the draft guide. And that's not to say that they're bad players or whatever, just that it doesn't fit the whole thing. And so it can be a tricky process. And then, like, just to tie it in, I have filed 1,089 game reports this season.
Oh my God.
And I've hit the halfway point at 1,000. So I still have another 1,000 to go over the next 2 months. That's just me. That's just me. Lassie's doing the same thing for us in Europe. You have David doing the same thing for anyone who's potentially going top 75. And you have all of our regional scouts, Lauren Kelly, Daniel G, who are pulling in hundreds of reports on anyone in a region who's even interesting draft plus ones, draft plus twos, and so on. So it's an incredible amount of work to it. And the interesting part about it, right, is that you're always wrong. You're wrong all the time. Everything that you do is wrong. You can rank a player and you'll rank them higher than everyone else, and you still won't have ranked them high enough. Because you can say, oh, I put this guy 28th. Everyone else had him 50th. Teams had him 50th, but it's like you still had a dozen guys who are worse than him over him. So you can't take that victory lap, right? Like there's so much of it that's just that I think it's you purely do it because you love it, right? And I think you get to a certain point where you realize, oh, like this is a lot of time that I'm dedicating on something that I won't even be able to publish. Or I won't be able to do that. And like, obviously I'm not saying that, oh, I have such a hard job. It's so hard to watch hockey all day. Not that, but you're devoting a lot of hours, just like any other job, to something that might not always be fruitful or perfectly the most productive thing that you could possibly do. And so it comes with its own sort of challenges of being in front of a computer all day, being in cars all day, and so on. So it's pretty cool to be able to just come out to shows and podcasts and stuff like that and be able to peel back the curtain on how that process works. And then also be like, guys, I've watched 400 players in North America and I found 3 who might be really good 7th round picks. So it's a pretty satisfying feeling.
All right. And hey, listen, when the comments start complaining about you putting Tej again with 6, you could just be like, hey, here's the 1,000+ game walks I've watched, and here's the next 1,000 I'm watching. So until you do that, take a seat, pal.
I love though
Show
how
the
much
game
people
reports
care.
and drop the mic.
I love how much people care though. Like, honestly, that's kind of a pretty cool part of it. It's like I don't want to reduce what we do as a team, but like, at the end of the day, we're just a bunch of people who are producing a draft ranking for the internet, and to see like how intense people get about it is fascinating. Like, and I'm not even, it's not even just like other fans or other analysts, like a lot of it is, I just realized my thing says EP Rinskide. It looks like a Danish word. Rinskide.
That's gonna be the podcast name. Mitch Brown, EP Rinskide.
This is, so I got a new keyboard recently, and my typing, which was already bad, has been a tire fire. Oh god, yeah. So my typing is just my keys are about 1.5 millimeters smaller on the top compared to my old keyboard, and my brain has been asked. I have to rewrite my entire brain. It's honestly been a horrible process, and I did it at the worst possible time. So yeah. Anyway, beyond that, it's just cool to see how engaged people are. Okay, you do get hate mail, but a lot of it is from like parents or an agent or two who are really upset. And like, whatever, that's not a big deal. They care. Also, they're paying. So like,
Go cry. Go cry with your money, with all your
pocket. Yeah, like if you're paying. Yeah, if you're paying for it, it's like, you can call me an idiot. You're still paying for it. Like, it doesn't get to me. And honestly, I love that type of stuff. Yeah, like I love it. People can say what they want to about our ranking. We do the work. We put in the time. We put in the effort. And I'm thankful that we get to put out a product that has so much engagement, that people care about so much on every platform. It's very rewarding.
Oh, I bet. And like the best part about engagements is it doesn't matter if it's good or bad. It's going to draw more traction to the product. So it's just like,
well, I would say that some bad engagement is a problem. Well, as we've been learning on Hockey Twitter lately. But
well, as long as you're not, misogynist or anything like that, you should be good, Bobby Ryan.
You're in the clear,
No, I just mean like in general.
Part. Iowa LSU goes like 12.3 million viewers. There's more interest in this tournament than ever before, and there was already so much interest in it. And he's like, "Oh my god, no one cares about women's sports." Like, I'm pretty sure like the Stanley Cup final doesn't get 12.3 million viewers. But all right, Bobby,
has it ever?
Not a chance. But I think my favorite part is he said name 7 because there's no way he could have named 7. That's why he said 7. He probably named 6 and was just like, all right, name 7. I bet you can.
Yeah. This is it's unfortunate that people like this continue to eat up so much of the bandwidth on social media, but I guess that's just the way that it goes. But yeah, as you can tell,
that's the stuff that opens your eyes that there's just too many people that think like that. Ugh. Oh well.
Yeah. It's true. It's disappointing, but there are a lot of good people in this sport. And I feel like as a writer, we don't do a good enough job highlighting those people. So one of the reasons why I did the Caden Lindstrom thing was, you hear these great stories about people, or the Tori Pittner article that came out recently. And there's another one with Tori Pittner coming out that is very cool. And part of the reason why I publish this type of stuff is because, we spend a lot of time talking about players who have done horrible things, and we don't spend enough time talking about players who are out in their community or are great people and do lots of good things for the people around them and improve the lives of those and their lives at a significant level. And so, yeah, it's nice to be able to give some of those guys shine. And that's one of my career goals, is to be able to do that more and more.
Yeah, fortunately, human nature, like 99 good things will happen, one bad thing will happen, but obviously we'll focus on the one bad thing.
Yeah.
And that's where we'll get all the traction, the clicks.
Yeah. It's been, I think hockey Twitter in general is kind of an interesting thing, right? Like it is very small. It's very insular, right? And so you kind of just see the same few annoying people over and over and over again. And it feels like they just never go away. If I'm being honest. No. Like somehow they have so much staying capacity because people are so starved for hockey hot takes that they'll live with all the other dumb crap that they say.
Yeah, honestly, that's a good way to put it, honestly. It's like it's such a niche community, and they're like cockroaches. They just don't go away. Like you would think like, oh, they got suspended. All right, don't have to worry about that anymore. Nope, just going to make 3 more accounts and never shut up, and he's going to get the following back because there's like cult followings on hockey Twitter, which is just always fun. But and like it's not specific to hockey. Like every sport's got it. It's just like this sport's already niche to begin with, so it's very niche at this point.
There's even like a prospect version of it too, which is like pretty interesting. But I learned what I learned what book talk was the other day. Lauren, Kelly, her EP Ricks, I was bringing it down what it was to David and I was like, wow. I had no idea that hockey was portrayed and engaged with it. I'm not hating on it. I'm just saying that like there are worlds inside our little hockey world that I have no understanding of, no viewing of, and sometimes you get introduced to them and you're like, wow, now that is interesting.
I wonder for sure.
Yeah, hockey is a pretty interesting. Like I'm a big basketball guy too, and that's like the sport that I follow like as a fan. And you know, with basketball, you see a lot of the media. I think hockey is very similar in terms of like the way media can be portrayed, just like very far back into the NBA's past is where hockey is. And it's very cool to see like kind of some of the same trends that occur in the NBA in terms of like, you know, the podcasts that are being made or how people talk about it, talk about the sport in very inflammatory ways in the NBA and always have now steadily work itself into the NHL. I think in general, we're a little sensitive in hockey, right? We're a little sensitive. We have like, you know, someone says, oh, this draft prospect, you know, I wouldn't pick him in the first round. You know, people assume that you just hate his family. Whereas,
but I was told this is a man sport. All for man.
Yes, well, this is the conundrum of this like hyper masculinity that you have attached with sports, right? The most sensitive people are the people who are also the people who are complaining about how sensitive the sport is and how it's getting and so on, which is a very interesting little thing. But I suppose you can extract that to politics in general and the world in general, where a lot of times these people are just kind of pinning themselves into their own corner. But yeah, it's interesting.
By snowflakes now. Oh.
Yeah. It's like, oh, these people are just like dropping dead left, right, and center because they got hit in the head too much. And so we're saying, you know what? It would be nice if maybe if you hit someone in the head, you got 5 minutes, like you do in the NCAA. You hit someone in the head, you get 5. That would be a pretty good adjustment. People would stop trying to hit people in the head or stop hitting people in the head.
Don't they do that in Europe too? And not in North America.
And people are like, oh, you're trying to make the game soft. And it's like, we're not saying that you can't hit people. You can even still hit people in the head. You just get 5 minutes instead of 2 for it. Like, you know, a change is slow. And I think that's applicable. Like in some ways, you know, sports are just kind of the, let's say it's just kind of echoing what we see in politics and in world discourse around us, right? Where an opinion can be, you know, something relatively inoffensive, like, you know what, maybe genocide, we shouldn't be cool with genocide, can then be turned around and put into something, oh, well, you hate everything else, or you hate all these other people.
Of the internet. It's like, I don't like like I like this. That means you don't like this. No, that's not what I said.
It's the best.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly how you like, you know, you can voice support for something, like even a player, like we're talking like the most insignificant thing, and people will be like, oh, so you must hate this other thing. And it's like, what? No, I can like two things. I like pizza and chocolate. Like I don't have to pick between them. Like,
yeah, like I know at least for Blackhawk fans, we see that right now with the Bedard versus Faber debate, and it's just like, guys, everyone thinks Brock Faber's a great defenseman. It's just like he's also 21. That's the only thing we're trying to point out. Like we can enjoy both. College, and he's a hell of like the thing I give him credit for is he's playing 25 minutes a night as a rookie, which is insane. I don't care how old you are. I don't care what you did before. And he's on a team that's pushing for the playoffs. But, like, no, you can't have that opinion because then if you say that, it's like, oh, so you think Bedard sucks. It's just like, can y'all have two opinions at the same time, or is it just not physically possible?
Bedard is good. Like, also, Faber's bad. He sucks. Bust. Yeah.
The cool thing about Faber, too, is, like, he's playing a hard 25 minutes. You know, some guys play 25, and they're like, for 7 of them, I'm just going to kind of hang out. Brock Faber's like, for 25 minutes, I'm going super hard, 100%. Every single second he's on the ice, he's playing the most insane, high-paced, aggressive hockey that you see, and it's pretty cool. On that note, of defenseman, what do you guys think of Korchinski this year? Obviously, a lot of circumstances not in his favor, and some tough situations with the loss of his father and the tricky situation on the team and stuff. But he starts off the year with some really good flashes. How has he been down the stretch?
You go,
Here's
Dylan.
first.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
I was gonna say, I feel for me, I've said this so many times on the podcast where he's probably too good for the WHL, but this is one of those circumstances, kind of like with Shane Wright, where you're too good for your junior league, but not good enough for the NHL. The AHL would have been a perfect middle ground, but obviously you're 19, you can't go to the AHL, which is kind of stupid to me. But I also get it from the CHL thing. Like Korchinski would have been perfect in Rockford this year, and we've seen how much the Ice Hogs have helped with the development of Blackhawks defensemen, like most notably Alex Vlasic, even why Kaiser has come up and looked really good since he got sent down and looked great in camp, but struggled to start off the season. Even guys like Ethan Dalmastro have really done well in Rockford, even Nolan Allen. So I thought he would have been perfect in Rockford this year. He might even benefit going down to Rockford next year, but I think like people, I saw one of our friends on Twitter. It's like, oh, he's the next Eric Gustafson, like all offense, no defense. And I'm like, he's 19. His most common defensive partner is Jacob Magna. Like, I think Chris Tanev would be perfect for Korchinski if they could sign him free agency, like stick him to him, and like you might have to send him to Rockford next year. He's not going to be 20 till June. There's so much runway. There's so much flashes. Like you see him kill plays, but then sometimes he gets burned. Like he's a 19-year-old defenseman. I think all this experience is going to be valuable. He's going through the ups and downs of a full 82 game season.
Yeah, just to kind of piggyback off what Pierce said, like he shows those flashes in the offensive zone and on the rush in particular. Like his skating ability has been it's been shown at times where I'm just like, yeah, I could see why they drafted him 7th overall. I could see the transition ability in his game. It's just like he's 19, so like he's gonna lose some board battles. He's gonna lose his man occasionally when they're cycling, and like you're seeing those growing pains, but also like his defensive partner is not doing him any favors anytime he's on the ice, and they're playing him 20 plus minutes a night. He's basically their number 3 defenseman right now, which is not the position you want him to be in.
Nope.
Right now. You would want him to be your 5-6, and you could give him like those power play minutes and stuff. But he's just getting thrown to the wolves right now, and it wouldn't, like Pierce said, it wouldn't surprise me if he got some time in Rockford next year. Also, wouldn't surprise me if this does him for the better and they go sign a defenseman to go play with him. Like, I think Jalen Chatfield's one of those guys that like he could play that stay-at-home game that would allow Korchinski to activate more and not be so worried about like, oh, I can't pinch because my other defenseman doesn't know I'm in a pinch, and then we're stuck with the 2-on-1, because that's happened a lot this year. And I think if you get the right partner for him, that's going to change everything. Because you can't, like, I think Vlasic and Jones is like the top pair. You don't want to mess with that. They've actually played very well together. And I don't think Korchinski Murphy worked when they did put them together this year. No. I think like Kaiser Murphy or Dalmastro Murphy on the third pair, and then you go sign a guy to play with Korchinski. That should be the plan right now. But like the offensive flashes, great. He is passing on the power play. Like they should just put him with Bedard on the top unit already. I'm so sick of this. Like, I watched Seth Jones look off people to take a stupid point shot every game, and I'm like, Korchinski knows to get the pucks to his wings. Like he knows to get it to the guys who can score. Like, and he's quick with his passes. He's precise with them. Like he's hit a couple stretch passes this year where I'm just like, holy shit! Like that's the stuff. That's the stuff you want out of him. Like I see moments where I'm like, I could see him being a Shea Theodore, but I also see moments where I'm like, I work on that own game, But that's the beauty of being 19 in the NHL. You have time, so. And this team's going to give it time too. That's the thing. Like,
it's great that he's showing like a lot of these guys, they step in, they're overwhelmed, and then they just kind of lose their identity. It's great to hear that he's still being Kevin Korchinski out there, still doing the Kevin Korchinski things. Like the NHL isn't a race, right? And sometimes when you make the NHL and you're draft plus 2, I think people are quick to assume that, he was NHL ready and then it all just fell apart. He's proven that he can't play. And I think a lot of the time, guys get to the NHL too soon, and then we have inflated expectations for them. But then other times, guys get to the NHL too soon, and then they just steadily build up and steadily improve and steadily improve and steadily improve. And for me, the common denominator between the players who improve and the players who flame out from being rushed, or the common denominator for the players who improve is they always show their game. And the guys who flame out always try to be something that they aren't. And so that Korchinski is still being Kevin Korchinski means that he's probably going to be okay. And I mean, this season was like, it's the perfect storm for him to not do well.
Mm-hmm. we said that with all the Hawks this year. Like it's a mulligan season. Like you had that amount of injuries early on in the year, coped with the fact that they weren't supposed to be good in the first place. Like,
yeah,
I can cut a 19-year-old some slack for not being elite in his first year in the NHL. Like, it's funny because like I think the reason he was getting so much flack early in the year was because Mitnyakov was playing so well out the chute, but then he kind of cooled off a little bit, and now it's like sounds like
Zellweger is also older though, even though they're the same draft class. Like he's had more development than Korchinski. Like
for sure, but like that's the thing with the NHL though. It's like you can't give one guy his flowers not being like, well, this guy's better. You know what I mean? Like and that's kind of the situation I think he got thrown into in terms of like getting compared to his peers at least. But I still love the upside to his game. I think if you just find the right partner, he's going to be very special in this league. And also, like in comparison to like the last high end defenseman we had, like Boquist completely tried to change his game when he went up as an 19.
Oh.
He stopped doing what worked for him.
Yeah,
Korchinski hasn't done that, like you said. So.
Good. I'm glad to hear. I always love when my WHL guys have success in the NHL. It's a good feeling.
I'm ready to see Colton Dach in the NHL now.
Oh, yeah, that'll be a fun one.
Because I think he's got the skill to get some power play time and put some pucks in the net. So
I like
just
power
throw
play
his ass
too.
in
Yeah,
the
a couple pucks. Yeah.
You're telling me I can put him up there instead of like Ryan Donato? Sure, let's give it a go. And that's nothing against Ryan Donato. Taylor Radish is going to be in, the EC. He stinks. Oh my god. Mitch, if you ever want to know a pet peeve of mine with NHL players is if you're bigger than 6'3" and you play like you're 5'10", you're dead to me. Like I hate that. This is a league where if you're big, you were gifted. You were gifted in today's NHL. It's becoming a smaller league, and I've seen so many players that aren't even elite. They're just big, and they fucking use their size, and they end up becoming serviceable. I thought Radish could do that, and he's just like, I just want everything to go my way, and then I'm going to shoot the puck. It's like, no, sometimes you just got to drive the net. Like, what we were talking about with Lindstrom? Lindstrom's like, fuck it, I'm just going to take it to the middle. I want players who do that with their size, and he looks like Tarzan, plays like Jane. That's all I'm going to say at the end of the day.
All right, so tomorrow I'm going to write a letter to the Chicago Blackhawks and ask them to trade for Pierre Engvall.
Oh my God. He and his 6-year no trade clause contract. Oh my God.
Yeah.
He'll be the longest contract on the Hawks, I'm pretty sure, with Jones.
Oh God, yeah.
He has like 7 years.
Terrifying. Oh,
I always wonder about, like, teams definitely value the physical side of the game a lot, right? And they also value the size aspect. So I always wonder, like, how do you manage that as a team? Because there are guys in every draft, right, who aren't the most physical players at their stature. And so how do you teach them to become more physical? And I think a lot of that just starts with, like, building the link between what they want to be and the physical side. Like, you can't make this offensive play in the NHL without being physical in this position first. Like, I don't know. I'm a big believer in player development. The players can improve and really, add new layers to their game and improve new things. But I've always kind of wondered, like, it seems to be that there are a lot of big guys who don't really have that inside driven physical side of the game. And it just doesn't really come. And they'll add other things, but that one element just never seems to develop. It's kind of a curious thing.
Like, I think like that was a big thing that always hung me up with Doc when we had him. And then he went to Montreal, and I think Marty St. Louis finally told him, like, hey, you're 6'4", 210 pounds, start playing like it. And now he does when he's healthy. And, you just look at, like, you look like a player like Alex Tuck, who, like, he obviously had the tool set, but he's a guy who knows how to use his size on the ice and knows that, hey, if I can cut this puck to the middle, there's not a lot of defensemen that can knock it off me, and I got a good enough shot to where I could probably put it in the net if I get a look like that.
He's a great example of a dude who was always physical and then added the skill later.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I remember I was really young when he was in the national team development program, but I have a lot of memories of that team. And, like, the thing that always stuck out to me was, like, he just creates by overwhelming guys. And then now in the NHL, like, he's making a ton of finesse plays, ton of high skill plays, but the starting point for all of them is his physicality. He learned, like, how, I can do this, I can spin off this check, grab this guy, and then I have a ton of space. And at first it was just to shoot it. And now it's like, I can find that guy through the next layer because I've created all that time and space. So I, like, because I'm always thinking, like, how do you anticipate a player's development? And the guys
Mhm.
who are physical and put themselves in good positions create advantages for themselves or teammates, even if they're not making the best play in those positions, seems to be the guys who improve more than the ones who are just, making the right decision every time. Guys who
For
improve the
sure.
most are the guys who get the most advantageous positions, regardless of what they're able to do with them, because they'll learn over time. The demands of the game change as you go up the ranks. You get older, you get more experienced, you become smarter, and so, yeah, that's something that I've been very obsessed with, trying to figure out. Like, the number one thing that I'm interested in these days is player development and trends and so on, and it's been probably the number one thing. It's been pretty cool to see all that stuff. Like, it's the same thing with defensemen too. Like, the part of the reason why this draft is fascinating is because all the big toolsy defensemen. Well, big toolsy defensemen consistently perform well from the draft. Of course, there are ones that don't, like Philip Broberg, but for the most part, the defensemen who perform really well are big and have tools. It doesn't matter if they can't make a play, because they'll learn that they can make a play with those tools in the future for the most part.
For sure, yeah. Like that, it's going to be interesting just to see like which one. Like, and I don't know if it's like work ethic that's going to get them to that next point, but it's just like you look at a guy like Anton Silyev, and it's just like if he can if he could just round out the edges a little more and like work on the fine parts of his game, like there's not a doubt in my mind he's going to be a top 4 defenseman in this league. It's just, is he going to do that over the next 2 or 3 years? And is the organization going to put him in a position to do that? Because that's another thing too. Like, you have some organizations that just don't give a shit how their prospects develop. You have some that will make sure they're getting the minutes they need, getting put in the positions they need. And then there's some orgs that just don't care. And it'll be interesting to see like where those defensemen end up for sure. Because like you said, like there's a lot of skills that can transfer to the NHL from these defensemen. And like, especially like when you mentioned like what you look for in like a forward's development, I know when like I'm looking at the draft, like Pierce probably could pick up on this in the last few years. Like, if you have any form of skill and can take it to the net on a consistent basis and win those battles in front of the net, I'm probably going to rank you higher than most people. Like, I remember I was really high on Dawson Mercer in 2020, just because Dawson Mercer had a tendency to get to the net, even for his size. And he's either going to create a chance or he's going to create space for someone if he loses the puck. And you saw him once he gets to the NHL level. Yeah, it's not as consistent as you maybe have thought it would be 2 years ago, but his game has translated to the NHL level in that extent. Like, when I watch him play, he's still going to the middle of the ice. He's still trying to find ways to go to the net. And I don't know, maybe it's just a minor skill to have for a forward, but it's something that I look for specifically. If you could do that, I feel like that's something that can translate almost all the time, and that's a way you're going to win over your coaches too, just going to the net. Like,
I mean, I don't think it's a minor thing. How many players in the NHL are 5'10" or under, forwards that is, and don't have physical skills as a top 3 ability in their skill set?
it's true. Like
Braden Point, it's like number 2. Number 1 is insane hockey sense. Number 2 is that he's in every battle, wins every battle, uses those battles to create space. Kaprizov, one of the best guys at getting the puck off the boards in the NHL. Clayton Keller had to develop that, and now he's a star. I'm honestly trying to think about it, right? And I mean, you guys see it with Connor Bedard. This guy, I think some people were surprised at how physical he was in the NHL.
He's feisty.
But it's all... Yeah. And guys bounce off him too. Like, he goes along those boards, and like big rangy defensemen will come in on him and they'll just wilt. Like, it's very hard to be a guy, and I'm not saying that Berkeley Catton can't develop these skills, because obviously he can, and he's got an incredible base of talent to work with, and he's a top 10 pick every day. But with Berkeley Catton, right, there aren't many comparables to him in the NHL right now until he develops that physical side. Like think about Trevor Moore. Like, he had to take the long road to get to the NHL, and he's a checker, but he's scoring a bunch as a checker, even though he's undersized, because he's learned how to leverage all those skills. So
Trevor Moore's my type of player, by the way. You just hit the nail on the head. Like, nice. I'm a big Trevor Moore fan, so
nice.
Like, my type of
same line.
Mm-hmm.
This is really it. Like, I can't think of anyone. And so
Logan
Berkeley
Stankoven too has gotten that since coming up. Like, he has some feistiness to his game. Like, it's hard to knock him off the puck.
Oh yeah. Yeah, he's real physical in a sneaky way, right? He's not hitting you without the puck. He has the puck and then he's hitting you. Knocking you off balance, getting inside the hands, and so on. Like, it's hard to be that guy. And so I've always wondered when we rank, because we, as a public outlet, we tend to rank smaller guys higher than NHL teams will rank them, if I'm being honest.
Mm-hmm.
And so I always wonder, like, how much are we banking on these guys adding something that they won't? And now we're starting to get a lot of feedback in that because we've been doing this for a few years now. And I would say that generally we have to be more aggressive ranking guys with advanced physical skills. And right or wrong, TJ Ginla ranking him over Berkeley Catton, even though it was one spot, even though it was heavily contested in our group, I think is a reflection of us as a team moving more towards emphasizing physicality and the skills that you, Dylan, were talking about.
Mm-hmm. Because, like, there's always going to be those skill players. They're at every draft, but it's like, can you be skilled and bring more to the table? And, like, I know Pierce was really high on Seth Jarvis when he came out of the draft a few years ago. Like, Seth Jarvis is, I think, one of the perfect examples. Like, every team's looking for that Swiss Army knife in the draft now. And if you could find it, you're gold every time. Like, I feel like. And maybe there's one in this year's draft. I haven't really looked too deep. If there's one that comes to mind to you that could be like, I know you mentioned, like Tej is kind of playing like that Seth Jarvis type player. Is there another player that has that type of tenacity to their game?
Oh man, how much time do you guys have? So in the
hour and a half, let's keep going.
in the smaller guy category, certainly someone like Justin Poirier stands out, right? Like, he's built like a fire hydrant. He scores goals and hits people. I mean, that's pretty cool, right? We all like goals and we like hits, and he's real physical. He's aggressive. And then as for like more of the sneaky way of doing it, Teddy Stiga. Teddy Stiga is one of those guys, 5'10". It's more finesse, but he's really good at like sneaking through guys' hands, driving the inside, cutting back off pressure, pulling the puck off the wall in creative ways and getting to the net. Same with Andrew Basha, Miguel Marquez. So a lot of different guys in this draft fit that criteria. And it's kind of fun to like go through the draft and look at all these different ways of doing the same thing. Like the way that Basha does it versus the way that Marquez does it versus the way that Stiga does it, completely different. But they all have that same core identity of like being physically engaged and then trying to make a skilled play with it.
For sure. Basher's the guy that I would love to see the Hawks pick with the Tampa pick this year. I feel like he's a guy that
he fits. Fast.
Oh, yeah, he fits the bill. Like, he fits the bill for what Davidson wants. And he's got that tenacity that I personally want to see in the forwards now. Because, like, we have the skill, I think, plus whoever they're going to add in the top four this year. It's just getting those complementary pieces now to put with it. So it's going to be fun to watch. Like, you've given me new players that I got to go find and watch some film on now, so I'm very excited.
Tanner Howe too. I can't forget Tanner Howe. I mean, he's wild out there. He's fun to watch.
Bedard's friend.
Oh yeah,
yes.
He's definitely got a good knowledge of Tanner Howe after last year watching Bedard highlights. It's just like, oh, he's slinging this guy the puck the whole time. That okay. And has his draft year been good without Bedard, or is it a different play style from him this year in terms of how?
It's kind of like a Brennan Gallagher type thing, maybe a little bit less open ice play, but more of being just really aggressive, taking it to the net. And I think the situation, like, he doesn't have a ton of help. Like, he doesn't have many playmaking options. And so the playmaking isn't there every game, but I think it probably ends up being a strength of the NHL. You're probably looking at like a third-ish liner, but hey, Tanner Howe, every step of the way, he surpasses expectations. Every step of the way. I honestly had never heard of him, and I followed the WHL draft until his first WHL game, and he scores 50-something points. So, like, don't bet against Tanner Howe.
Yeah, that's been the sign the last 2 or 3 years at least, for sure. Pierce, do you have anything else to add? Because this has been super informative. Thank you so much.
Yeah, Mitch, it's always. I think Dylan did say this earlier, but yeah, we had the discussion about how hockey is so niche. Like, hockey prospects is the niche of the niche. So, again, whenever we have you guys on, like, again, we're going to school where you're shutting us up and you're just talking, and like, you guys are always so passionate about it. Like you guys just love talking that stuff. So it's always an honor when we have y'all on, and got to do it again, hopefully after the draft again, because in the next month, we're going to know who's picking first overall. We're going to know, who's going to go where. Like, we're getting so close to the draft. I think I don't realize like how like close it's coming up on us. So, yeah, always love reading your stuff at Elite Prospects. To anyone listening to this and who doesn't have like Elite Prospects, like get a subscription. It is so worth it. Not just Mitch, he does an amazing job. So does so many other people. Just a great team.
Yes, thank you so much. We have really assembled a great team, and we have some great talent, and it's very cool to be surrounded by smarter people than you every day. You learn a lot, and I think our work really reflects, if you're into the nerdier side of the game, into the X's and O's, into the analysis side of things, we're the best resource for it. So check us out. And then on top of that, if you like tracking data, prospect data, and so on, Lassie, Lennon, and I work together. We have a Patreon. You can find the link in my Twitter bio at Mitch L. Brown. And it's $2 per month, and you get access to player cards for probably 1,000 players this season, be thousands from previous seasons. It's a lot of work, but it's fun, and it's nice to be able to share the data for an affordable price as well. So if you're into that type of stuff, check it out.
For sure. Always love using the
Absolutely.
Frank Nazar cards to dunk on people. It's my favorite.
I do. I'm just gonna say, I should put a disclaimer here that I do not permit people to dunk using my tracking data cards. But I don't know if I can do that. I feel like I would wreck some of the fun. So I'm just gonna say I don't condone it.
Yeah,
But I do see it. I do see it, and I do laugh sometimes. So do with that as you will. But I appreciate that people get into it. That's great. Again, I said about the criticism that you get and all that type of stuff with the draft board, it's just honestly, it's just super cool to see so many people engaged and care about what you're doing, even if they think you're stupid for it. Like,
I also think it's awesome. And like the one thing I think you guys do so well with it that, some other some other analytics pages don't really do is you make it just so accessible to the reader and easy. Like you could never have looked at prospects in your entire life. You're going to look at one of those sheets and you'll know exactly what's going on. It's not like just a bunch of graphs or like a bunch of shot charts. And like, if someone who's never seen that, that's going to be like, you're looking at a chemistry chart or something, but like, you guys make it very easy for a new fan to get into it, and that's what it's all about. Because like, I could think off the top of my head like dozens of people over the last 3 years that like I'll just show them a couple of like charts from you guys and charts from like JFresh and stuff, and it gets them into looking at a game and look at the game at a different level and under a different microscope, and it's a great way to expand the game, showcase players, and I just think you guys do an awesome job. So once again, awesome job, guys.
Ditto.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. Thank you.
So once again, Mitch, thank you for coming on so much. Thank you for taking the time to come on almost an hour and a half, even if I was gone for half of it because of my internet. It's gonna give it. You know what? I almost never listen back to the podcast unless I'm editing. I'm definitely gonna listen back to this while I'm editing. So you know what? That's the silver lining of that.
I appreciate it, Pierce and Dylan. Thank you guys. Honestly, it's always fun coming on the show with you guys. I always look forward to podcasts, but I always look forward in particular to PJ's cast just because I like the chaos that ensues. Usually like after the 35-40 minute mark, it like starts off like very structured, and then it's like, man, this thing is really weird, isn't it? And then it just kind of devolves from there. And so I enjoy this type of stuff. I hope I didn't say anything that pisses too many people off. I don't think anything I said was
You know what? They can deal with it.
Except the one guy, he said he didn't like his prospect rankings, I guess, but that's about it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So I should be in the clear for this one. And again, as usual, I think hockey Twitter, has there's a lot of great people on it, and we should try to do a better job, myself included, of like really amplifying that. And I respect you guys for having me on, and I respect everything that you guys do. I don't listen to a lot of hockey podcasts, I'm not gonna lie, but I do listen to your guys' show every now and then. I just check in, see what you guys are doing, see the chaos that's unfolding.
Usually like me complaining about the Senators or something, Pierce talking about it,
I might have missed it, but you guys should turn your hate to the Buffalo Sabres for a little bit. I would be very curious to hear what you guys think about the Sabres and what's going on there.
We need to get Jacob on the show. He's our buddy. He's a giant Sabres fan. I just want him to have a therapy session about the Sabres this year.
I'm pretty sure he was on the first time we interviewed it with Jacob. Yeah, that's the fun of the show. We could be complaining about sports, whether it's hockey, like football. I remember even talking about baseball with like the new Fanatic uniforms, and we sometimes just like don't even talk about sports. Like we'll go read Reddit stories and just hear the most unhinged shit possible, whether it's real or not. It's still entertaining.
Yes, I am unfortunately a Redditor. I'm unfortunately addicted to scrolling.
So you understand the chaos that it's Reddit.
Oh yeah. So see, the thing is, right? They chopped the head off of Reddit recently, and then a few heads came back out. Now you have new subreddits of even crazier things. And yeah, so some of these, the relationship advice in particular, as someone who has been married for a long time, I'm just going to say the relationship stuff in particular is crazy. People will be like, you know what? This guy puts the cereal in the wrong way in the cupboard. Should I get a divorce? And it's like, you know what? If this is the thing, if this is your non-negotiable, then probably. Then you should definitely get a divorce if that's your non-negotiable. But yeah, Reddit is great for that type of stuff. And I too, like Pierce said, I love the fact that I don't care if it's real or not. This is the one thing. I reserve media literacy for Twitter only. Media literacy goes out the window when I'm on Reddit. Screw that.
Oh my god.
So yeah,
that's my favorite with some of those
podcast
stories.
after the draft in Vegas, where we talk about the Blackhawks picking first overall and reading "Am I the Asshole" stories with Mitch Brown. I'm looking forward to it.
Great, yeah.
A match made in heaven, I say.
My personal opinion, though, is that I don't want the Blackhawks to pick first because I don't want any more good things to happen in this franchise. And I'm sorry, you can shoot me out back. It's okay.
Yeah.
We're only going to get Caden Lindstrom. What a shame. Yeah, your golden boy might be a Blackhawk. Just think about that for a second.
Yeah. Okay. And the thing, too, is, right, you look at their draft history, and it's going to be like Caden Lindstrom, and then they're just going to pick a bunch of guys I also like, and then I'm going to have to root for them to make
God damn Kyle Davidson for actually being able to assess talent. Like, this is ridiculous.
I'm a terrible hater, I'm not going to lie, but I might just be a hater of the Blackhawks until the end of time. I might just pull this off, and I think I'm justified in that. People will be like, "Oh, virtue signaling, whatever." I don't care. I don't care about that. It's valid. I'll die with this. I'll put it on my gravestone. I'm mad at the Chicago Blackhawks still.
I think you can tell that Pierce and I enjoy being the Darth Vader of the league sometimes, and like everyone hates us. Like I'm pretty sure when we won the draft lottery, I was like screaming that on the podcast. I was like, "We get to be the fucking villain again, baby! This is gonna be awesome." Because like being the villain and sucking is one thing, but being the villain and being good, that's fun.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. Being the villain and being
everyone can get their licks in for the last 7 years. They've sucked the last 7 years, but like. When the team starts getting good, this is going to be fun again. It's going to be fun again.
Yeah,
because like it's valid hatred. It's valid hatred on and off the ice. I'm not even going to fucking argue it. Like,
no, we'll never get mad at anyone for. Yeah. We don't even need to get into that, but
yeah.
I think in general, like people can make their own decision about how much weight they want to attach to that type of stuff. Like some people can separate it, some people can't, and that's okay, right? Like. Mm-hmm. Like we talked about this earlier, some can separate, some can't. That's a fair, valid thing, like you said, Pierce. But I will say though that the way that the Chicago Blackhawks draft is interesting because they have a bunch of weird, like big, slower, physical guys, and then a bunch of super speedy dudes, like the Turbo Twins, Frank Nazar and Oliver Moore. And
Turbo Twins, I love that.
That's that was on the spot.
Good one.
So.
We gotta send that to the Blackhawks admin account, like on Twitter. They're gonna use that, just like we predicted Kevin Skorchinski when he would score his first NHL goal, and they did that.
Oh! I did not see that. That is great. That is good. I'm a sucker for these ones. Stupid puns and Reddit posts. That's what I'm all about.
The best.
All right, boys.
All right, Mitch. We won't keep you on too longer. Thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah, thank you for the chaos. I appreciate it. I'm going to go say hi to my dog and maybe tell her about all the chaos that unfolded.
Let's go.
I don't know if she'll understand, but she's a chaos dog, so maybe she'll get it like at a spiritual level. All right, boys, take care.
All right.
Yeah. Thanks, Pierce. Thanks, Dylan. Appreciate your time.